surprised to know that we do have a tropical low forming out in the Bay of Campeche with a 40% chance for development over the next 7 days. And this guy is going to impact us in the sense of some much needed rain. If you want some more details on this system and what we can expect, I'll have them coming up.
And heavy rain caused parts of Broward and Miami-Dade counties to flood. Parts of I-95 were closed due to this, as both counties saw 5 to about 7 inches of rain. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency for South Florida. The city of Sarasota, which is about 3 hours from Miami, received at least 3 inches of rain in just 1 hour. Now, the rain forced ground stops at 3 airports, causing delays for at least 7 hours. And in Dania Beach, at least 40 rescues in Martin County. A possible tornado brought down trees and power lines.
We are not aware of injuries. We're still going through the neighborhoods, checking. Fire rescue is here. We have contract workers for the county cutting the trees off the roadway, but this is impassable.
The National Weather Service will survey the damage to determine if a tornado did touch down. And we're monitoring grid conditions this morning for ERCOT. Right now, conditions are normal and there's enough power for the current demand. Now, the update comes as state lawmakers continue to analyze demand on the grid and future supply opportunities. We also look into the implementation of newly passed laws to improve that grid.
We've long known the most vulnerable time for ERCOT's power grid is on hot, late summer nights as the sun goes down. That's when the big chunk of energy generated by solar power goes offline, and it gets worse if the wind goes down as well. According to this report delivered to lawmakers this week, this August, each night around 9 p.m., there is more than a 16% chance the grid will have to take emergency measures, like asking people to use less energy. And there's more than a 12% chance leaders will order rolling blackouts in parts of the state.
We're trying to put together a puzzle that kind of illuminates how this market could look for the next 5 to 10 to 15 years.
Wednesday, the top brass at ERCOT and the Public Utilities Commission updated the Texas Senate, saying they are going through a complete overhaul of how the grid operates. In the next 6 to 10 years, they'll need to double the amount of power they manage.
We have the pieces out in front of us to build a market for the next 20 years, and I'm confident that with the tools that we have and with the experience of the market that's going to contribute to it, we're going to get to that right picture.
The main drivers of demand are new AI and tech data centers going online, oil facilities in the Permian Basin switching to electric power, and population growth. The most vulnerable time is over the next few years before all the state-run incentive programs deliver new power plants. And in the meantime, leaders are keeping an eye on price increases.
The pendulum between the trade-off between cost and reliability, which can exist, went really far to the side of reliability, almost at the expense, at any expense. And I think it's time that we really consider cost.
The new report did detail the grid has plenty of power if weather conditions this summer are, quote, normal.
And the summer season and high temperatures mean that you're likely going to pay higher electric bills over the next few months. But you can lessen the blow. Air conditioning repairmen say that there are several ways to keep your AC unit from needing costly repairs, like doing maintenance at least twice a year. It's also important to make sure that the drain lines are clear. And Christopher Esparza with American AC and Heating says that these are issues that he does see often and that their company receives many calls for repairs.
Air conditioning isn't so much the introduction of cool air as it is the removal of hot air. And if the box outside is not clean, then it cannot release that hot air efficiently. So then your bill goes up.
Interesting. And if your AC is broken, you might receive a costly bill, but Esparza says that payment plans are available. Well, today in history, on June the 13th, back in 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson nominated Solicitor General Thurgood Marshall to become the first black justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. And on this day in 1966, the Supreme Court ruled in Miranda versus Arizona that criminals had to be informed of their constitutional right to consult with an attorney and remain silent. Since then, when someone gets arrested, police do inform them of what is allowed in the eyes of the law, which is often referred to as their Miranda rights. All right, now you're getting a live look at the U.S. Capitol. The House voted to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress by narrow margin, which recommends his prosecution. Coming up in just a few minutes, our D.C. correspondent will talk about how House Republicans could continue to target the Attorney General through the courts. And Texas passed laws to increase transparency in elections, and they're supposed to prevent fraud. And in some cases, it can make it possible to discover how some people voted. The House Elections Committee took a closer look at concerns about ballot secrecy. It comes after one of the state's top elections officials briefed senators last month about the issues.
I think that the big transparency push really started around the 2020 election.
Okay.
And I would say that in the last 2 years, we have seen this increase exponentially to the point where counties are now proactively putting the information online rather than waiting for requests.
Last week, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton released a legal ruling reiterating that governmental entities are legally required to redact identifying information on a voter's ballot before it's released publicly. Both the Senate and House election committees will later create a report from these hearings to include their findings and possibly some policy recommendations for consideration in the upcoming election. And for the first time ever, Cameron County officials were forced to destroy Election Day ballots due to a misprint. These ballots were meant for the upcoming runoff elections set for this Saturday. And according to the Cameron County Elections Administrator, Remy Garza, officials received the ballots with initials on the back, which is appropriate during early voting, but not during Election Day itself.
Had to ask them to reorder it, but when they reprinted them, they used the same serial numbers as the original order. And so now, instead of being able to use these ballots as early voting, we have to destroy them because we have duplicate serial numbers. And this is a very rare thing. This is not something we've done before in Cameron County.
Garza says that they destroyed over 19,000 ballots. Fortunately, they were able to do this before any of them got sent out for Election Day. And President Biden is in Italy for the start of today's G7 summit. Sources tell the Associated Press the 7 countries have agreed to provide Ukraine with $50 billion backed by frozen Russian assets. Now, Biden and Ukraine's president are also expected to sign an agreement committing the United States to Ukraine's security for the next 10 years without committing U.S. troops.
Well, Danielle told me that she wanted pizza today, so that's what she's getting as you head out planning the lunch break. We're looking at 90s this afternoon. No heat advisory, but we are going to be feeling like 100 to 110 degrees as early as noon. I'll be back with some more details.